Hi, everybody. Well, there's something that people like to do, and that is often that they will book their airfare through the cruise line, right? They'll use things like Easy Air or Norwegian Air or Royals version, Celebrities version, and they'll book it through there because they have that confidence of peace of mind that the cruise line will try and get you to your destination if something happens to that flight, because you're booking everything through them. And in most cases, that's exactly what's going to happen. However, there are some pitfalls. So you've booked a cruise through a cruise line, and we'll just call it Cruise Line A. And you decide you're going to book a flight through them as well. They arrange a flight and they say, boom, here you go, here's your flight. And you say thank you very much and everything, and then you turn around and you start looking as you're getting closer to your cruise, and you notice, hey, they booked you on the same day, your flight, as your cruise. They often do this. In fact, they prefer to do this in a lot of cases. And that is the worst advice anyone could ever give. Yeah, fly in the day of the cruise. Worst advice you could possibly get is to do that, right? Unless you're an hour down the road and the flight's like 15 minutes and you can, oh, the flight's canceled, everything, okay, I'm gonna hop on a bus and get there in an hour and a half and I'm okay. Unless you're that close, you gotta fly in the day before. You're taking an awful chance, if you don't, of missing the entire cruise. However, the cruise lines, when they're just random agents just doing it, they're just, they're leaving on the 23rd, book the flight on the 23rd in the morning. And some of them I've seen literally have like a 3-hour window of arriving, right? Of arriving there. And here's a perfect example. Some passengers were coming in on my last cruise on the Caribbean Princess. Some clients were coming in to join us on the group cruise, and they had scheduled them for a first flight in the morning out of their city with a short layover, and then they would fly them to New York, where we were leaving from. And when they noticed that, and they asked me about it, I said, no, you should try and get that changed. Try and get that changed to the day before. And when they called them, the travel agent person that they talked to through the cruise line actually told them, look, it's the first flight in the morning. The planes are already sitting there, so they're not going to be late. They're not going to be late. So your chances of you missing the flight and not being able to get to the cruise are very, very slim. So do not worry about it. That's what they told them. Literally, that's what they told them. And guess what? Well, the plane was sitting there. They just didn't have a crew for the plane because the crew was late the night before and it was too early for them to fly. So no, that flight in the morning did not take off, even though it was the first flight in the morning. What could possibly go wrong, right? They finally did end up getting there with about an hour to spare before the cutoff time for being allowed on board and customs would be leaving. And luckily they happened to run into somebody there as they were getting their luggage. They saw somebody who's from Princess who quickly managed to grab them a ride and get them to the cruise port. Because most of the shuttles had already gone, right? They've already done the shuttle buses and everything. They don't run after a certain time because you're not gonna make it to the cruise ship on time. And so when you're dealing with the cruise lines and they're talking flights, first of all, yes, check the prices and everything, right? And check where you're sitting and all that, of course. But the number one thing you should be checking, the absolute number one thing you should be checking is when they're flying you. Make sure it's not the day of the cruise. Fly in the day before. Now, if you are going to fly in and that's your decision, then it's on you, right? You cannot blame the cruise line. You cannot blame the airline. You can only blame yourself. But yeah, it's such a risk, especially now that we're coming into the winter season. You never know when a storm's going to hit. You never know the delays it's going to have. And it can be a storm not in your city. For instance, I'm flying out of Ottawa, Canada. Well, if there's a storm in Calgary, which is thousands of miles down the road, if there's a storm there and my plane is coming from Calgary and can't take off, my plane's delayed, right? Planes just don't fly from, Ottawa to Florida to Ottawa, to Florida to Ottawa. That's not their only flight. They will send them on various routes, to maximize the efficiency of the plane. And so, no, it's not just, it only flies here. That's the only flight it does. The only kind of planes that do that are the long haul planes that do like 12-hour flights. So they'll do a 12-hour that way, change up cruise 12-hour this way. Those planes only do those routes normally, but because they're specifically designed for long distance travel. They have enough fuel, they have enough size, etc. But going from Ottawa, a 3-hour flight, a 2-hour, a 4-hour flight, those planes are used the most efficient. And I see so many people just take it for granted that the cruise line is going to get them there. And then, yes, they might get you there, but you might be 3 days after the cruise starts by the time you get to a port that you can actually board the plane on. It can become a real nightmare out there. So there's my number one advice when you're dealing with booking your flights through the cruise lines. Price is important, seats are important, but number one important, make sure you're flying in time to actually get to the cruise.